ProPack.
The ProPack.
Yeah,
right.
what kind of stuff's in there and where does it apply? Like, what of that package?
Well, ProPack is sort of it's pretty much the golden package of everything we've created, except for there are some serious like automation tools and some other tools outside of it, such as Slugger, Color Breaker, Spectacular, DocuSlim. There are some really important tools that we make outside of the ProPack, but the ProPack basically has all of the just sort of the everyday tools that you would just want to have. You find yourself needing, maybe not today, but maybe 3 days from now, you find yourself needing that tool, and you're glad you have it. Just something, for example, something like Cloner, where you have an object on a page and you want it to be in the exact same location on page 10. You can clone it to pages and in the exact same location. You can clone whole pages. So whenever we do something, we take an idea like cloning and we think, well, what else do we want to apply cloning to? An object, a group, a page, and a layout, things like that. So Cloner fills that purpose. So the tools that are in there, it's 15 different tools right now. It's gone up and down over the years. We add them as we feel like it. Maybe we'll bring back some old tools that were in Quark 4 that we might want to revisit into Express 8 at some point. The great thing about the way we license ProPack that is, if we do release a new tool, it's already licensed automatically if you download it. So as we release new tools, if we choose to, those are already licensed in the ProPack. But yeah, the 15 tools are commonly used things: scaling documents, adding crops to mechanicals and dimension arrows, and fold marks and guides, things that are automated for you, and other things that are more design tools like eyedropper for extracting colors out of images, or just your a quicker way to add harmony and complementary colors to a palette. The eyedropper is a nice tool. ShapeMaker is a very unusual tool. I collaborated with a math PhD on this for some of the parts of ShapeMaker. It has some very advanced shapes that you can create that seem simple actually, but the math behind them is fairly complicated. Some of my favorite ones are the various different types of spirals that you can create. We've all seen the stock spiral stuff that's out there, say in Illustrator, but we have the ability to, for example, say you want a pentagonal, slightly rounded Archimedean spiral. It's pretty cool. So you can put text along a path like that, and you have a very unique design element. So ShapeMaker, you can create wave boxes based on sine waves, and those can take on some very interesting shapes, and you can apply it to columns of text. So your text columns can make these beautiful curves, and I'm very interested in that sort of design automation also, and letting users do things that would really be tedious or actually impossible to do unless you had a robotic hand to mathematically get the perfect curve. So that's one of the great things about ShapeMaker. So the tools vary from real productivity things like resizing a 60-page document in one click. Big time saver there. It changes a couple days work into a couple minutes work, or maybe a few hours if you have to tune it all up afterwards. So yeah, the tools are always about enhancing the ability, extending the ability obviously is the metaphor, and then and also automating and speeding up the process and the workflow.
Greeker seemed like one. You mentioned earlier replacing lorem ipsum text. Greeker seems like one that really solves a common problem in approval of work, where you're trying to get approval on a design, and somebody looks at the text and wants to make a bunch of changes.
Yes.
Is that right? Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, Greeker is a fascinating product to me because it's a very simple product, but the way it works is much different than, say, placeholder text, which is the common thing, and everybody learns to put lorem ipsum copy into a new design that they're going to show. But what we found in the ad agencies that I worked at early on, especially, and this was in pharmaceutical ad agencies especially, they were already developing their copy very far along at the time when the client was going to be first seeing the design. And they certainly didn't want the client noodling on the copy that was being developed. But the designer also wanted to work with the live copy because the headlines were there, the main bodies of text and bullets and things were all in place that they wanted to design with. And so the problem was, well, how can I toggle this exact look into Greeked text, which is not really Greeked. We run an algorithm on it. So the algorithm runs on the text. All the caps are in the same place. The sentences, the paragraph breaks, the headlines are all the same, yet you can't read it because of the algorithm. It's a very simple algorithm, but and it's a good puzzle for anyone who cares to email us and tell us what the algorithm is. There won't be a prize, but it'll hopefully be a satisfying puzzle for you to solve.
That's interesting. That in itself could be something.
Yeah, and it has to be able to reverse itself. The beauty of this algorithm is you run it again and it sets everything right. So that's the nice thing about it. So that's how we can use live copy instead of placeholder. So it saves time and makes better designs.
That was one of my favorites, in that I could see where it applies, yet just to have that functionality in my toolkit would really make things shine. And for a designer who may not be working with such sensitive or heavy text like pharmaceutical, even still, it gives you that ability as a designer to show the client and get approval on layout without mixing the content.
if you're comfortable with swapping in placeholder text for real text every time or whatever, then go ahead. But if you want to work with your live text and keep that moving along and be able to toggle back and forth, then Greeker's the tool, and it's a great tool.
Cropster seems to have so many dimensions, not only to help prepare a document for output, but I also read that you could use it to crop pieces of a document. Did I read that right?
Yeah, I mean, that evolved later. The initial Cropster was about creating mechanicals, because there again in the ad agency and really a lot of the design spaces, documents would actually be created on tabloid paper. A smaller ad, for example, that was going to be in a magazine or a newspaper would be created on a tabloid paper with crop marks around it, guidelines, and dimension arrows, which was one of our innovations that we added in there. So you'd have a bleed, a trim, and a live area guide, and crop marks corresponding on the outside, and some dimension arrows also. And then you'd have a slug at the bottom of the tabloid paper. So that's the way ad agencies printed it out. So they'd be printing tabloid all day long, and the reason they needed to do that is because they have a traffic department that moves these and circulates printouts through editorial. And so the slug on the bottom was quite important, which is another product of ours called Slugger that was from very early in the 90s, and we pioneered that too. But Slugger and Cropster always worked in conjunction. So you'd have your mechanical up here with your ad that you were working on, and you have the slug on the bottom with the corporate logo, a sign-off, and the metadata about the fonts and things used, and who's the art director, who's the copywriter. All that stuff travels with the document, so the document itself has a lot of intelligence to it. And that was one of the things that I saw early on, is the information about the document is every bit as important as the document itself in a lot of these workflows, and Cropster aids in that process. And yes, we did. Eventually, I sort of realized, I love the fact that in a photo editing program you can just crop an area of a page. Why doesn't a layout program have the same ability? So with Cropster we added that. So if you can select a box and then crop the document to that box.
Nice. I like that. Well, and then talk a minute about Reporter, because that seems to be something that our education customers may really like, especially in the classroom, where there's a lot of different projects that come in with many different elements and many different specs.
Well, Reporter is born out of the need to know what's in a document, all the listing, in sort of a list form. it's basically creating a report about the document, including the pictures used with some little thumbnails and the fonts used, etc., style sheets, kind of knowing the anatomy of a document. And that's important if you're in a serious workflow and you're trying to keep control of versions of assets and things that are used, and make sure that things are conforming to the art director's specification. And it can become a legal record, in fact, sometimes for certain types of workflows where you have a record of what was in a document. And Reporter is sort of a lighter version of some of the other products we have, like Color Breaker and Spectacular, which are for tagging up a document with arrows pointing to this style and that color usage. And very clever programs that they put tags on the document that as you move the tag, the arrow snaps to the tag. So it's very handy for creating a very nicely marked up thing. So Reporter is sort of like it's part of ProPack. It's not sold separately. Yeah.